All right, disclaimer number two. All right. I am responsible for everything that comes out of my mouth today, and you are responsible to yourself for whatever you do with it. Okay? Bearing in mind, the more you think about something, the more that things happens. All right, so clear something up really quick. I thought today was Father's Day. Peter just said, "Oh, it's not today."
Happy Children's Day.
But Happy Children's Day. But I always say every day should be Father's Day, and every day should be Mother's Day, right? And I was supposed to talk about Mary Magdalene, and I was like, Father's Day, and I'm going to talk about Mary Magdalene, and I was fighting with that right there. But really, we all have both traits in us, right? There's just not a male trait, and there's a female trait. We all have both, right? And due to where the way we were brought up, we tend to think, oh, men are supposed to do this, men don't cry, women are supposed to do this, women are more nurturing. We all have all those traits, right? So you don't have to go out and wear a dress as a man to be feminine, but you can be nurturing, right? Like, we can't birth babies, but you can at least be as nurturing, right? And so, we want to be able to connect with both as an individual person, right? And so I was doing some work on Mary Magdalene, and I just have to go back to my Methodist upbringing, where she was somewhat subservient to the male, which was Jesus. I remember being taught that, just even if they didn't say it, we talked about Jesus and Mary was a prostitute or whatever they want to call it. Come to find out, that was not even the case, right? Without her help and nurturing, he wouldn't have flowered to be from Jesus to enlighten Christ, right? So that blew all the stuff I had out of the water, And then I'm always researching. And I was listening to a scientist, because she does lots of scientific work. I'm going to talk about Challen in a minute, but she does a lot of scientific work. And she said, and I heard this 2 days ago, and it hasn't left me yet. She said, and this is going back to, checking out the genes and all this stuff, that the female body is 100,000 years older than the male body. And I was like, okay, I got to go and restart. So I asked questions right away. Well, how did they reproduce? And so I'm going on that rabbit hole right now, right? Because anything is possible, right? And if somebody can perceive that, then that comes from somewhere that she is allowed to say that. And she does a lot of research into gene therapy and manipulation and all that. And so that's the stuff that I started with. So I want to talk a little bit about channeling today. And I should be able to touch on the Akash, or the Akashic record, right? And I'm going to start with channeling. Everybody knows what channeling is, right? Where you get into a certain vibration and you get to speak, and there are two different kinds. To me, my kind is I'm a conscious channel, because when I get up here and I start talking, energy comes through and it goes out. And there's the unconscious channel who goes into a meditative state, their energy steps aside, and then some higher consciousness, the lower consciousness, depending on who it is, comes to that person. And you get that information. And so I've been studying this stuff for half my life, at least 30 years, right? And what is funny now is that I told a client this yesterday. Back in the day, we had to read all this information. So I have thousands of books at home, all doing with spirituality. We had to read all these things. And so now, your guys's, in your reality, you get to Google it. You get to YouTube it. right? And so a lot of stuff, what they're saying now is what we've been reading about for 30 years. That you have to go to the mystery school to learn and, get a certain kind of knowledge. It's all out there. So there there are many, many channels out there. When I was coming up, there was just a few. And I'll give you some of the ones that, because I've been studying this again for a long time. Lots of late nights and, and, and so Kryon, Kryon, is it's one of the ones I like the most, only because all the stuff I've seen that they have said that came true, right? So they said it over a period of time, it came true, like 9/11, right? And so there's lots more other things, right? Kryon always begins with, I am Kryon of magnetic service, right? And he always talked about, I'm here to help move the grids or shift the poles, right? And in the beginning, we thought that shifting the poles as everything will be topsy-turvy. That's what we thought. But even in his saying, he says, of magnetic service. So what meant it turned out to be is that the poles were shifting magnetically. Like if you get I have a little compass, that pole has shifted, right? And so with that shift comes all different kinds of opportunities to grow. Like your DNA reacts to that shift in the magnetic field, right? So now some people who couldn't hear voices are hearing voices, right? Because everything is shifted, almost like a radio station. The dial was off, and now it's like, oh, the dial is shifting and you can hear more things, right? This is natural stuff, right? And so Kryon is a good reference for me. And you can look these up online now. Lee Carroll is the guy that channels it. Back in the day also, in channeling, you would have to sit and meditate for hours. Now he can go close his eyes and doing it so long, and then he's in that state. Kryon is a good place to start, right? There's another channel, and again, all these, Kryon has there are about 16 of these books, right? The first one was End Time. The second one was Don't Think Like a Human. Because we're more than humans, right? We're more angelic or multidimensional, and that's what he was talking about. And this is, again, 20, 25 years ago. That's coming into play now as more as mainstream. The other one is Robert Shapiro, right? And again, so there are like probably 20-something books in this series all the way back from the 80s, right? So this is all channeled information. And again, I like these because, again, they prove to me that what he was channeling was true. And it was true because he says, this is what the future looks like, right? And if you keep doing what you're doing over and over and over and over, this will be the outcome. At any point, we could have changed our minds and we would be on a different outcome, right? And so those things happen, right? We didn't care about people. We didn't care about life. All of a sudden, 9/11 happens. We're caring about everybody we don't even know, right? And so all those things came true. And then there are a couple other books that you don't even have to get these books. But again, these are my reference books that got me to where I am right now. This is called The Book of Knowledge, The Keys of Enoch, right? And again, it took me 7 years to go through this book because I was told you have to go through the whole book. Most of the time I started reading, I was out after like sometimes the first page. I started reading, I'm asleep. Yeah. Sometimes a paragraph, I had to reread it a couple times, I was out. I actually went through the whole book because I think what I had to do was get certain concepts in my head certain words in my head, like coded pyramids, all different kinds of things. All right. So I'm still going through that book. So all this is channeled information, right? The last one or one of the last ones as far as channeling goes is the Urantia book, right? Information that will. So when I was reading all these books, I would get to a certain level, and I would be stagnant, and then all of a sudden something else would come up, a different book, and I would start over. It's like, oh, there's the information I'm missing, right? And that happened with all these books. The last channel information I got was this series, and this guy just died maybe a year and a half ago, right? Timothy Wiley. And this is called Rebel Angels in Exile, right? And it sounds a little, you're like, should I or shouldn't I? But it was worth it. I think there were like 5 in this series. And what this did to me was, this took me back into Earth history. Like, how long have we been here? They talked about the fall of man, right? Which to me just meant we were at 4/5 density in consciousness, playing around with information and stuff that at a 3rd density they didn't have. And so we messed around and did something that affected all of us. And so we dropped in consciousness. That's all the fall was, right? And so these angels, entities now are coming back to say, we are sorry that we went along with this entity called Lucifer. You can hear that. Somebody will call it the Lucifer Rebellion, where he decided to go against what was the norm and say, I don't believe in this all-encompassing God, and it's going to be me, I'm it. And I guess he was so good, he talked a bunch of angels into doing that, right? And it was like certain angels were in charge of certain territories, right? And I think it was maybe 7 of those territories sided with him. And then others didn't, and they kept being connected and getting information straight from source. And so this filled in a lot of things. This talked about seraphims to me. You heard that word, seraphim. And what they said seraphim was, it was like a Uber. You would say, hey, I want to go to Mars, and this seraphim would come, and it would engulf you and take you, and you around on Mars, or wherever you wanted to go in the universe, right? So we've heard all these words, just not in these contexts, right? And so all these rebel angels now, or they're not repenting, I don't know if that's a good word, but they're coming back to see, oh, we really did cause all these issues, and now we have to watch as they play out or balance themselves out. Everything has to be balanced, right? So channeled information, and that's the old stuff. Now there's lots of new people, that have never heard of these guys, like Michaela Sheldon, right? She's one of the new people that's doing a lot of channeling, where she'll actually, and she can do both, unconscious, and she'll be bringing information from the Pleiadians, the Council of Light, the Arcturians, lots and lots of people that we really don't hear from, or we didn't know about. They're there, we didn't know about them, right? So again, all the new people, they're making me happy because, like, I'm not really crazy for all these 30 years. I've been reading this stuff, and, and I was just compelled to read it because I was supposed to teach it. Didn't know that when all that was going on. I just was like, you got to read all this stuff. So you got to start listening to these people. And then, so once you start listening to all these channels, you're going to realize that you can do that as well. Every single person is a channel, right? Like if you come to me and I decide, okay, yeah, I'll channel some information for you, then that information comes to my filter, and I like to use the word tainted, because everything that comes to me is tainted by everything I was brought up about, everything I think about, will ever think about, and I'm giving that to you. So you take what I say with a grain of salt, or what anybody says with a grain of salt, because it has to come through, your filter. If you were abused, you can't get away from it. It's in your vibration. So whatever you're given has some of that in it. That's why it's always good to go back and balance this stuff out, right? But everybody has the ability to channel their own information, their own truth. Truth. Never could get that word right. Truth. Everybody has the ability to do that, right? We just never were taught that, right? So as you go through all this stuff, you already know all this stuff. Whatever I'm telling you now is not new to you on some level, right? Some of you will be like, it will feel good and you'll go research it. Some of you will be like, right? But at some level, all this is true because we're all connected. On some level, we're all connected, right? Yes? Yes. At some level, we are. We always say we're made in the image of, so, right? We're from this one energy, person, source, so we're all connected. We keep saying that. It's being proven now physically by there are people that call it the God code, which is in our DNA. We all have it. So we all have access to this information. All we're doing is reminding you that, hey, this information is out there, right? So there's lots more information coming. I got some other information. I like these updates because I'm always looking to grow, expand, move higher, right? And so the New York Times is one of those papers that everybody references. ABC references, NBC. All of them reference the New York Times. And so December 2017, they printed a story that says the government has a program about identifying UAPs, or unidentified aerial phenomena. It's called UAPs now. Back in my day, we called it UFOs. We don't know what it is, so it's an unidentified flying object. This was the New York Times, right? So that's kind of what we call mainstream, kind of, right? That was December 2017. I just saw this story on Good Morning America last week. So it took, from the time that story was printed, almost a year and a half for it to get to more mainstream, right? That we are indeed not the only things around. We are not, right? And so all this information I just showed you, we've been talking about that for that long. For as long as I can remember, the 30 years, and then before that, because this was happening before I was even born, right? So it's finally creeping out that this information really is true. So when they say they go into, I did some work on DNA, 12-strand DNA, and it told me that certain levels, or every level of my DNA was connected to some off-planet civilizations. The Arturians, the Pleiadians, the Lyrans, and the list goes on and on and on. So we are part of this, quote unquote, this galactic family. That means we got family all over, right? I love books, right? And these ones I love because they're small. They're not like 400 or 500 pages like most of the other ones. And these ones, this is just good information just to awaken you to what you already know, what's already there. You're going to start reading it and be like, something in you will be like, yeah. It'll be confirmation for you. This is just the Galactic Council. And these are books 1 and 2. This is just stuff that you can go pick up and read. You can just go to Book People and pick it up and look at it and read it while you're there, right? I'm just giving you information that's already there. It's just getting to be mainstream, right? And when we start talking about UAPs or UFOs, most people want to think, oh, they're where they're from. I think the most important thing about this is the propulsion system, right? Because you've heard people say there's this big black triangle, whatever it is, it makes no sound, right? I was a mechanic. We got combustion engines, it explodes, makes noise, pushes out an exhaust, and off you go, right? Most of our things have those kind of engines. These don't. So what are they? That's the question I have versus who's driving it, right? Because the more I think about it now and the more I know, it's like some of those are ours, right? Remember the, what was that big jet? The SR-71, right? Big long thing that used to fly over and take pictures of other people's things. We didn't hear about that for 10, 15 years after. Right? So they had it all that time, and then all of a sudden we heard about it. Because I saw it, I was in the Air Force, and it flew over, and it was so fast, it blew through the cloud and left a hole in it. And left a hole in the cloud. It was going so fast. But when we saw that was 15, 20 years old already. But we just saw it, right? And so the other ones that are out now is the F-1, those bombers and those type of planes, right, with the stealth. Guess what? They had those a long time ago. We're just hearing about them now, right? It's getting better. It's getting better. Once they tell us something, it's 10 generations old already. I talked about this before. We're at cell phone 10. They already got cell phone 20 already. Just going to roll it out slow, right? So this Space Force thing we're hearing about now, people heard about that so far? We want to start a new division. It's going to be the Space Force, right? We got the Air Force, the Navy, Marines, all those. Now we want to do a Space Force. Ladies and gentlemen, we already have a Space Force. They're just trying to ease us into it. Then they're going to say, oh, here's our new thing. But we need to remember it's already 20 years old, at least, right? The propulsion system was to talk about. What is that? What makes it go so fast, right? And so once we start dealing with that, they're going to have to come out and talk about 0-point energy, or this energy field that's already here, right where we stand, breathe, sit, that they are already using and utilizing. It's just not mainstream, right? So it's not important who's driving them or where they're from. It's just how are they moving and working, because they tend to be able to stop on a dime, do 90-degree turns at hundreds of miles an hour. For us, we can't do that. In a human body, centrifugal force won't allow us to do that. We'll black out. So there's something that they're doing, right, that we're not privy to as the regular public, mainstream people, right? So but again, all this is nothing new. All this we have access to, right? Nikola Tesla, I talked about this yesterday. Nikola Tesla, he was studying all this stuff before he passed away, right? And him and the Edison guy were going back and forth. The guy that wanted to create a grid that we plug into and pay for, and the guy that saying you can get it for free, right? They drove that man crazy and drove him to bankruptcy, and then he passed away. And what happened? They stole his stuff and using it. on the back in the back end. So all this stuff is nothing new. It's just being rolled out, right? The fact that it's being rolled out slow is because some people are saying it's going to destroy religion, right? Because we've been taught we're the top of the chain. Ain't nobody else out there, nowhere, anywhere. That's what we're taught. That is not the case. So now the church has to say, oh, we've been lying, or we didn't know, right? And I don't believe we didn't know, right? Because I know that the Vatican has lots of information in their library that they won't let anybody else see or read about, right? Then the Pope comes out and says, oh, well, if they are extraterrestrials, we'll baptize them. Well, so what you're saying is you do believe something is out there. So again, they know more than they tell us, right? But again, if we get into a certain place, we can connect and understand all this stuff. The talk was really about the Akashic record, right? I'm using, I have lots of books on it. This one is called The Dawn of the Akashic Age by Erwin Laszlo and Kingsley L. Dennis, right? And to me, the easy way to explain this is just a unified field of energy, right? Like for me, when I get up here, I do all my study, all my work, and then all this, and then when I get up here, I get connected to this big library that has everything in it. And then that energy uses my words and all the things I've thought, and it comes out to you the way it's coming out to you. So that is what is called, we call the Akash, or the Akashic record, right? And they're just libraries. Like I have an individual Akash that has information about me and my lives and where I've been and where I'm going, right? Because everything happens right now, or we're just spreading it out because we're on third dimensional, right? I have my individual Akash. Everybody has theirs. And then we have a group Akash as human beings, right? That all the information is there. The earth has its own Akashic record, right? And then all these records go through our sun, which is another library. And then that library connects to, a central sun, which is another library, like the main library. So that's how you explain this Akashic record. And so again, you have access to your Akashic record, what you were last life, the life before. If you knew all the information in your Akashic record, we would just be like this. Because some of us have been alive 1,000 times. And that's why they say you can be whatever you want to be. You can be whatever you want to be because you were it already. You just have to get in that place and get connected to whatever that artist, that musician, whatever the expertise, you have access to that. Or access to the main information that somebody was that already. Because we're connected, right? So we just need to be aware that we have these connections, all of us, right? Like when you're doing healing work on people, you're doing more than healing whatever that physical ailment is. It may be showing up as physical, but it's more than likely spiritual, and then it's more than likely like familial, has something to do with your whole family line or something, right? That's why some people are so engrossed in whatever the the detriment is, whatever the issue is, because it's more than just your issue. It's your family line issue that you're moving through. And then once you move through it or heal it or balance it out, then all your family members, all that gets balanced out. Like when you're healing right now, you're healing whatever's in the past, you're also healing whatever is to come. Because once you are healing, you get to that balance place, everything forward, if there's such a thing, is already healed, right? Everything backward is already healed, right? I always say, everything is where every thought is where you last left it. I like repeating that. Every thought is where you last left it. Think about it. Your last accident, what were you thinking about back then? And every time you go back there, what are you thinking about now about back then? Are you thinking it's an accident, or are you thinking it's a lesson, right? If you're thinking it's an accident, then it has a negative connotation. It's an accident, happened to me or whatever. But if it's a lesson, then it's a more positive outcome. Every time you go back, it's positive. You know, I got whooped a few times for stealing $1. Right now, $1 is nothing, but back then, $1 was a lot of money, right? And so I had to go back and was like, that was my fault, right? I did that. I learned my lesson. You know, mostly I learned how to steal better, but, you know, I learned my lesson. So every time I go back, it's not, I didn't get whooped, right? It was cause and effect. I did something, something happened. So when I go back, it's not negative to me anymore. And so that's what you have to do with all your traumas and dramas. All is, you keep thinking about it in that way. You keep thinking about it and creating something right now. Thinking about it back then, creating something right now. Thinking about it back then. So when you think about it back then, you got to find some way to make it a learning experience, a positive experience, no matter what it is. You know, I always say this, if you're the person that was abused for 10 years, you have to go back and be like, who better to teach it than somebody who's been through it over and over and over and over? You're better the teacher to teach somebody like it will never happen to any of my kids or my friends' kids or anybody like that, right? So somehow you have to go back and make that a learning experience, because everything is about learning. No matter what it is, it's about learning. Learning, should I do that? Yes, I'll do that, or I will never, ever do that again. So it's a learning experience, right? So, and again, you have access to all this information right now. Where you are right now, you have access to everything. And everything you can change in a split second. That's not how we're taught. We're taught 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Or 1 and 1 equals 2. But 1 and 1 never equal 2. Because you're never alone. So I'm never one. I was never one. It's me and my guides and my family, you know, and my angels. So I'm never alone. So I was never one. So 1 and 1 is never 2. 1 and 1 is 500, or how much ever those connections are. That's how we have to look at it. We don't have to look at it anymore like, got to go to grade school, you know, middle school, high school, college, doctorate. That's how they strung us out, right? And I said this yesterday. Most people who are billionaires, millionaires, didn't even finish school or just did high school. And the issue is that they love something so much, they didn't care what I told them. They just went and did it. And boom, it blew up. They didn't go thinking, I got to make $1 million. No, they just think, I love doing this thing so much that it doesn't even feel like work. And that's what you do, right? I have some young kids, and I always say in the morning, what do you want to be? I don't know. How are you going to get there? You don't even know what you want to do. You know, so that's the first step. If you don't know where you want to go, you're going to get there. But, you know, who knows where it will be. But you got to decide, at least you have to say, I don't know what I want to do. Show me, help me, guide me. Like, let go and let God is what they say. But you have to ask, right? Because angels, God, extras, whoever, they're not going to come and do stuff to you. Because they can't, because of free will. Angels can't say, I'm going to help you. You have to say, I need some help. And then they'll be like, I'm on it. right? Or they're always on it. You just got to give off this energy that I want to be this thing. I want to be this thing. And then they're like, I'll put this here for you. Go left, go left, go left. You go left. You like, I ain't seen you for 20 years, dude. I don't even know what happened. You listen. They were guiding you. But they can't say, here's this thing. You have to ask for it because this is free will spot, right? And you're free to be in bondage if you like. If that's the experience you want to get, you're free. It's that free, right? Okay, I'll take a question or two if you have one right now. Anything? Okay, so we can talk after if you like. Penny, you have something? No?
Probably a lot.
Okay, I like it. So that's my job, is to give you a bunch of information, so I can tear down all the stuff that your mama told you and your daddy told you that you couldn't be, and the church told you and your school told you you can't do this. My job is to tear down all that so that you realize the middle of the onion is there. I'm just peeling off the layers. Yes, sir.
Where can I get those books?
I'll
I'll get the titles from you.
You can get the titles from me. I used to get these at a place called, everybody heard of Book People? That used to be called Grok Books, Grok Books, and it was in an old house on 17th Street. And all they had was old books, lots of old spiritual stuff. And then all of a sudden they grew up and it was Book People. All the old books were gone, and then they have new books. There was another place out here on Lamar that was closed. I forgot the name of that book. They closed too. We bought them all the stuff because I realized I'm going to need these books later. So we bought a whole bunch. But you can get these on Amazon now. Again, you don't have to, but I got lots of them. And you can always come to the house, and in case you don't want to buy them, look them over before. I'm happy to share that with you. Okay? Yes.
I have actually the Keys of Enoch.
Keys of Enoch?
I found it randomly in Seattle
Mm-hmm.
in a bookstore.
Mm-hmm.
And a group had recommended it to me, so
Mm-hmm.
I bought it.
Mm-hmm.
How do you, I know it's difficult to read. How do you, or do you have a moment of the day? Do you do something? Because I read it and I'm like, I don't know what I just read.
Right.
I feel like it went in,
Right.
but it's hard to.
Right. Just remember, you know all this stuff already.
Yeah.
Sometimes it wants to get you used to the terminology,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
And for me, this book turned me on to other books.
Okay.
And it made other books pop out to me. It's like, oh, I read this in this book already. Or like, now there are people out there, Corey Good and name of David Wilcock, that they always reference when they're talking to these extraterrestrial people like the Blue Avians. And they are from the family of Ra. Sound familiar? Right, which has to do with the Egyptian dynasties and all that, right? So that book, once you say, I'm going to try to read it, it opens other avenues for you. Because your guys are saying, okay, you want to know about this? I'll show you this. Now, I don't recommend this to people now. I recommend some of these other ones that are smaller, that they can, at least look at. And then if this is a reference book, that would be a reference book. But there's some terms in there that's also in the Urantia book. Almost like the information was coming from a central place. It just happened to be two books, right? So, yeah, it is difficult to read. I don't know how to tell you to do it. But there are other books that that's a scientific book. That book is when religion and science were melded together. Now it's not that way, right? So now you have to look at something different, but that is a reference book. Sometimes I just look at the pictures in it, and it's like, but I know something is working, because then I hear other things and it's like, check this one out, right? And that's how I got to all these other books that one led me to other ones, right? Whereas I don't really have to reread it. I reread it just sometimes, like, I still don't get it. But some of the terms now are familiar to me. And I think I had to read that just so that I can say certain things. And they can tell me certain things, and I can be like, oh. Because when they tell you stuff, when stuff comes from a high intelligence, it's like almost like blocks of thought. Has to come to your filter, and you have to work it out. Like sometimes for me, it's like I'll see an image of David and Goliath, because they know I know that story. I was brought up on that story. But what it really has to do with, this person in front of me has this big project that they think is overwhelming, but they can do it as just a little person. David slew Goliath with a sling and a stone, right? And so this information comes in blocks of thought. And then you have to just figure it out yourself and work with it. Is that good?
Good.
Okay, cool. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay.